Good to see you all again. My name is Alex, and you are on the Classic Cars Roast channel. Right, no more beating around the bush. We need to have a serious and probably uncomfortable conversation about the 1970 Chevrolet Impala. This behemoth of a car is a classic example of the malaise era, where the American automobile industry started to hit rock bottom. The Impala was once the crown jewel of Chevrolet, but by 1970, it was starting to show its age, much like my uncle after a long night of drinking. Now let's talk numbers. You can find restored models of this heavy iron at auction, and believe me, they're not cheap. We're talking about some models going for upwards of $30,000. All for what? A car that was once used and thrown away? It's mind-boggling. You've got cars with a mere 97 miles fetching prices that make you want to scream into a pillow. And what about that brutal charm everyone talks about? Sure, it has its appeal, but it's like trying to polish a turd. You can't ignore the fact that it's a massive hunk of metal that's been propped up by nostalgia and the idea of its only original once. So what do you think? Is it worth it? If you're hunting for an Impala, you better have your eyes peeled for a good condition model because the market is heating up like a cheap barbecue in July. The irony is, these cars were once sold as family haulers, but now they're being treated like rare collectibles. First impressions? I'll say this. The exterior design, with its Coke bottle styling and chrome bumpers, screams classic American muscle. But don't let that fool you. The engineering is where the wheels start to fall off, literally. You've got a range of engine options, but let's not kid ourselves. The best you'll get is a 454 cubic inch V8 that barely manages to hit 390 horsepower. That's just pathetic horsepower for a car of this size. And don't even get me started on the interior. It's like stepping back into a time machine that's stuck in an awkward decade. The dashboard layout is clunky, and the materials used are about as high quality as a fast food wrapper. I mean, who thought it was a good idea to have comically thick door seals to hide panel gaps? In conclusion, if you're serious about picking one of these up, remember two things. You're not just buying a car, you're buying a whole lot of history, warts and all. And if you find one in good condition for a decent price, go for it. But be prepared for the ride of your life. All right, car enthusiasts, here we are at the heart of it all, the creation story of the 1970 Chevrolet Impala. This beast was birthed during one of the most tumultuous times in automotive history, an era known as the malaise era. You know what that means? It marks the decline of the American muscle car and the rise of mediocrity. 1970 was the last great year for high-compression V8s, and it shows in the Impala's options. We had everything from the humble 250 cubic inch inline six to the absolute beast, the 454 cubic inch V8. But here's the kicker. This was also the beginning of the end for the glory days of American performance. When you look at the Impala, you see a car that embodies the style of the times. Coke bottle curves and a distinct side crease that screamed, "Look at me!" But under that slick exterior, the truth is hard to swallow. With compression ratios dropping to a pathetic 7.6 to 1, the once mighty V8s were now wheezing out a miserable 190 horsepower. Are you kidding me? It's like watching a heavyweight boxer turn into a featherweight overnight. The Impala was offered in several trims, including the custom coupe and the sport sedan, but they all suffered from the same malaise. Sure, they looked good from afar, but get up close and those comically thick door seals are just hiding the poor panel gaps from your prying eyes. And don't even get me started on the interior. Those dual dashboard pods might look nice on the surface, but they're just a distraction from the fact that the overall quality was pretty dreadful. You could feel that Chevy was cutting corners, and it only gets worse. Now let's talk about the engineering. The turbo-hydromatic 400 transmission, the best automatic transmission ever built, was a saving grace, but even that couldn't mask the decline in handling. Cars from the mid-60s to early 70s handled much, much better than this lumbering giant. It's like comparing a finely tuned sports car to a clunky old truck. The Impala was a big, heavy beast with a hooligan streak, but it lacked the finesse of its predecessors. In the end, the 1970 Chevrolet Impala stands as a bittersweet reminder of what once was. It's a classic that captures an era of transition, where the raw power of American iron began to fade into the background. The brutal charm of this car is undeniable, but it's hard to look past the compromises made in its creation. What do you think? Is it worth diving into this piece of history, or is it just another relic? Look at this monstrosity of a car, the 1970 Chevrolet Impala. It's like they took the last great year for high-compression V8s and decided to slap on some Coke bottle styling and call it a day. The full-width chrome bumpers? Yeah, they might look shiny, but trust me, they're hiding a world of mediocrity underneath. Those bumpers are standard fare, and I can't help but feel they're just there to distract from the dreadful build quality. The two-piece grille design is a sad attempt at sophistication, yet it feels more like an afterthought than a thoughtful evolution. Seriously, how do you mess up a grille? Now let's talk colors. Mist green, classic white, fathom blue, cranberry red, and shadow gray. What a palette of uninspired choices. I mean, did someone lose a bet and decide to go with these drab options? The paint might hold some nostalgia for those who lived through the era, but let's be real. Today's car buyers expect a little more flair. And sure, the colors may have been trendy back in 1970, but they're as exciting as a wet blanket now. Look closely at the body lines. They're supposed to create a sense of motion, but instead, they just look confused. The distinct side crease? More like a sad wrinkle trying to find its place in the world. This car screams, "I'm trying too hard but failing miserably." And don't get me started on the rust spots. The trunk floor, lower quarters, and rear wheel arches are practically begging for attention, and not in a good way. If you're thinking about picking one of these up, just remember that common rust spots are the least of your worries. The interior? Well, the exposed fan motor on this A-body is a clever solution, but it's overshadowed by the comically thick door seals that only serve to hide those pathetic panel gaps. And those bench seats? You might as well be sitting on a park bench. Absolutely no support. When you take a step back and look at this car, it's a classic case of style over substance. The exterior doesn't just fail to impress. It actively works against the idea of owning an iconic piece of American automotive history. For me, a repainted body is an immediate no, game over. If I'm going to spend my hard-earned cash, I want something that doesn't just look good in pictures, but has character and integrity. Would I buy this car? Absolutely not. The exterior alone is enough to turn me off, and honestly, I'd rather roll in something with a little more brutal charm. When it comes to the interior of the 1970 Chevrolet Impala, it's like stepping into a time machine that's been left in a damp basement for 3 decades. Sure, it might have that nostalgic charm, but let's not kid ourselves. This cabin is a monument to mediocrity, a showcase of why the malaise era was called the malaise era. So what about the dashboard? You've got dual dashboard pods housing a speedometer and, if you're lucky, an optional tachometer. But don't get too excited. The design is about as thrilling as watching paint dry. The layout is functional, sure, but it lacks any flair or sophistication. The controls are like something out of a budget rental car from the same decade. Now, on to the seats. The standard bench seats are about as supportive as a wet noodle, while the optional bucket seats try to add a hint of sportiness but ultimately fall flat. You'll want to check for wear and tear because, let's face it, these seats have seen more action than a bar on a Friday night. And if you find a model with the optional center console, rejoice, but know that it's not going to save you from the overall lack of comfort. The smell? Oh boy, you better brace yourself. If the previous owner didn't take care of it, you might be greeted by that unmistakable scent of mildew and aging vinyl. Definitely not the kind of aroma that screams luxury. Those aging wiring harnesses can also lead to lighting issues. So don't be surprised if you find yourself fumbling around in the dark trying to figure out why your dashboard lights have decided to take a vacation. And let's not forget the quirky features, like the optional fiber optics for monitoring exterior lights and those concealed windshield wipers. Sounds fancy, right? But in practice, these gimmicks are often more trouble than they're worth. They can malfunction, leaving you with a dashboard that looks more like a science experiment gone wrong than a functional interior. With all that said, if I'm hunting for a classic car, I want something that doesn't just look good on the outside, but also feels like a well-crafted masterpiece inside. The 1970 Chevrolet Impala fails to deliver on that front. For me, a lack of comfort and quality is a deal breaker. Would I spend my hard-earned cash on this? Not a chance. All right, gearheads, it's time to dissect the heart of the beast. Let's talk engines. The 1970 Chevrolet Impala came with a smorgasbord of options, and let me tell you, some are better than others. First up, we've got the 155 gross horsepower, 250 cubic inch inline six-cylinder engine, code L22. You heard that right? 155 horsepower. Pathetic, isn't it? With a torque rating of 235 pound-feet, it's about as exciting as watching paint dry. Who in their right mind would want to drive this underpowered, lumbering piece of machinery? If you're after performance, this engine should be your first red flag. Now, let's step up the game a bit with the 350 cubic inch V8, code L48. This one cranks out a respectable 250 gross horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque. Still, it feels like a mere Band-Aid on the gaping wound that is the malaise era. Sure, it's better than the inline six, but when you consider that this is the last great year for high-compression V8s, it's hard not to feel disappointed. Now, if you're still hanging around for something with actual muscle, the 400 cubic inch V8, code L65, is where the party really starts. This beauty delivers a solid 265 gross horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. Finally, we're talking some respectable numbers that can get you off the line without embarrassing yourself. But hold your horses. The competition is fierce, and we're not done yet. Let's not forget the heavyweights, the 402 cubic inch V8 engines, code L34 and L35. With horsepower ratings of 330 gross and 350 gross respectively, and torque figures that push 410 to 415 pound-feet, these engines are the real deal. Finally, we're back in the realm of serious power. But here's the kicker. The 454 cubic inch V8, code LS4, is the absolute king of the hill with a jaw-dropping 390 gross horsepower and a monstrous 500 pound-feet of torque. Now we're talking. This is the kind of engine that makes you feel alive. But don't get too comfortable. The automatic transmission options, specifically the Turbo Hydromatic 400, are what really elevate the driving experience. This is without a doubt the best automatic transmission ever built, hands down. If you're still stuck with the other options, you might as well be driving a toaster. So, there you have it. A deep dive into the engine lineup of the 1970 Chevrolet Impala. It's a mixed bag, to say the least. Some engines are downright embarrassing, while others pack a punch. For me, if it doesn't have that 454, it's a hard pass. What's your take? Would you settle for anything less? All right, gearheads, it's time to dive into the heart of the beast, the transmission and rear axle of the 1970 Chevrolet Impala. Now, when it comes to automatic transmissions, there's one name that stands tall above the rest, the Turbo Hydromatic 400. This bad boy is the best automatic transmission ever built. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This unit is as tough as they come, delivering smooth shifts and the kind of reliability that could make a brick jealous. Forget about those pathetic Ford C-Sis or the flimsy THM 200. Those are for folks who have given up on driving pleasure. The Turbo Hydromatic 400 is the gold standard, and if you're lucky enough to find an Impala with this transmission, you're in for a treat. Now let's talk rear axles. The 1970 Chevrolet Impala came with some decent options here, with rear axle ratios like 2.73 to 1, 3.08 to 1, and 3.31 to 1. Sure, it's not a high-performance setup by any means, but it gets the job done for cruising. The lower ratios give you some decent torque off the line, but honestly, if you're looking for exhilarating acceleration, you might want to consider a different beast altogether. With that said, the rear axle complements the Turbo Hydromatic 400 nicely, allowing for a smooth ride that makes you feel like you're gliding down the highway rather than wrestling with the road. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are some critical drawbacks to consider. The aging wiring harnesses in these cars can lead to some pretty dreadful electrical issues, causing everything from dashboard lights to tail lights to flicker like a disco party gone wrong. And don't even get me started on the mechanical weak points. Those timing chains can be a real headache. And if you're not careful, you might find yourself deep in the weeds with transmission troubles that can turn your dream ride into a nightmare. For me, The mechanical integrity of a car is non-negotiable. If you're looking at an Impala with shoddy transmission work or a rear axle that has seen better days, that's a colossal red flag. I can't excuse poor maintenance. It's a deal breaker. So, if you're considering buying one of these beauties, ensure that the transmission shifts smoothly and the rear end is solid. Because when you're behind the wheel of a 1970 Chevrolet Impala, you deserve nothing less than the best. Would you settle for anything less? I know I wouldn't. Now, let's dive into something that's crucial for any classic car enthusiast: the suspension, brakes, and overall handling of the 1970 Chevrolet Impala. Spoiler alert, it's not going to be pretty. First off, the suspension on this beast was designed to provide a smooth ride. But if you think a cushy ride means good handling, you're in for a rude awakening. This car is built on a full-frame platform, and while that sounds robust, it means the Impala is about as nimble as a lumbering whale. When you take a corner in this car, you're met with a wallow that feels like you're steering a ship rather than a car. The suspension was soft, designed for comfort, but in the process it sacrificed any semblance of responsiveness. You know how some cars have that thrilling sense of connection to the road? Not this one. You'll be left wondering if you're driving a car or just floating in a giant metal marshmallow. Now let's talk about the brakes. If you thought the suspension was a letdown, just wait until you hear about the stopping power. The Impala came with drum brakes on all four corners for most models. Drum brakes in 1970. That's pathetic. Sure, for cruising around town, they might get the job done, but if you're trying to stop this 2-ton beast from highway speeds, good luck. You'll be praying for a miracle while you're mashing that brake pedal, hoping it doesn't turn into a game of who can stop first. The last thing you want in a classic car is to feel like you're playing roulette with your life every time you hit the brakes. And don't even get me started on the steering. It's a power-assisted steering setup that feels about as connected as a wet noodle. You turn the wheel, and it's like there's a delay before the car decides to respond. You want feedback? Forget it. You're better off using a Ouija board to figure out where the front tires are pointed. So, what's the bottom line? The 1970 Chevrolet Impala might have been an icon of its time, but when it comes to handling, it's like stepping back into the dark ages of automotive design. If you're looking for a car that can handle a twisty road with finesse, look elsewhere. This car is a straight-line cruiser at best, and if you ask me, it's hardly worth the hassle. Would I buy one? Not a chance. I'd rather have something that doesn't make me feel like I'm wrestling an elephant every time I take it for a spin. When it comes to the 1970 Chevrolet Impala, reliability is a mixed bag. Sure, it comes with some serious power options, especially if you opt for one of those big block V8s, but let's not kid ourselves. This car was built in an era where quality control was often an afterthought. You have to be prepared for the fact that these beasts can suffer from common rust spots, particularly in the trunk floor, lower quarters, and rear wheel arches. These areas are notorious for rusting out, and if you find one with clean metal, consider yourself lucky. Then there's the electrical system. Aging wiring harnesses can lead to lighting issues that are more headache than charm. And the mechanical weak points? Don't even get me started on the timing chain and the longevity of the automatic transmission. Sure, the Turbo Hydromatic 400 is the best automatic transmission ever built, but even it can give up the ghost if not properly maintained. So where does that leave us? The 1970 Chevrolet Impala is a classic that embodies the malaise era, its horsepower dwindling to a pathetic level compared to its predecessors. If you're someone who values the raw power of a high-compression V8, you'll find this car a shadow of its former self. But here's the kicker. Despite all its flaws, there's a certain brutal charm to the Impala. It's heavy iron with an unapologetic character, a car that used to be discarded but is now cherished by collectors. If you stumble upon one in good condition for a reasonable price, snatch it up. Remember, it's only original once, and finding an unmodified example is becoming increasingly rare. At the end of the day, would I spend my money on this? Only if I could find one that hasn't been turned into a rust bucket or a rolling disaster. So, if you're in the market, be diligent, check those rust spots and look for signs of shoddy repairs. The Impala may have its issues, but there's no denying the nostalgia and style it brings to the table. Now, is it too yellow? If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Leave your comments and impressions. Your opinion is very important to me. Until next time.